Uncle Steve, you are back again for another fireside chat with us, and we're really, really happy to have you. Just want to start off real quick by asking how you been, man. What's been going on?
Everything good, just plugging away, doing my usual stuff, Yeah,
Nice.
nothing, various things in the family and the extended family and stuff like that, but everything's okay, just what sort of anchors me is I'm working like you guys every day
Hmm.
and always have, project to project, and so that's what sort of keeps me sane and keeps me grounded.
It's that routine a lot of times, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I'm a believer in that, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. It does help keep you sane. You can't control the chaos around you, but you can control like your little pocket of the
Yeah,
world, I
you're the
suppose.
chaos inside you. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Um, we wanted to start out just asking you maybe like a Patreon exclusive question that will just be to like our Patreon members. You can always defer and say no, I'm not going to talk about that. Screw you guys if you want to. But
Uh,
I wanted to ask you if you could give us any update or sneak peek into the Telemon sequel.
I'm it's with my agent
Nice.
in my new agent that in New York, and he's I actually have I don't know if I told you this. I have another idea for a book that my agent is trying to put together as a two book deal, which is just sort of, I forgot if I told you this or not, but it's kind of um, my 36 books that I would recommend on leadership and that sort of stuff. They're actually war themed books. Books, like the number one is the Iliad, and it goes on through books about World War II and the Napoleonic War, blah blah blah. But stuff that's about kind of the virtues of a warrior that then, in my mind, applies to the virtues of an artist. So it's, in other words, the bottom line is it's all done and it's with my agent. And whenever he decides to get off his ass and do something, then we'll see what happens.
That sounds like
Nobody's ever happy with their agent. At least they're
right.
working hard enough.
I'm guessing he needs a routine like you do. Maybe you need to call him at 3 a.m. and say, "Get down here to the gym. We got work to do."
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for asking, Jonathan. Yeah, just
Yeah.
that's what that is.
That's awesome. So I would anticipate maybe a Christmas or like first, maybe second quarter release like next year, or is it too early to tell?
Yeah, I mean, who knows how long, if it even finds a buyer, and
Yeah.
then it'd probably be another year after that. Yeah.
Cool.
So I don't know why it takes so long, but it does.
Hmm. Are you guys still pursuing traditional publishing, or are
Yeah, this
you?
is traditional
No, yeah.
publishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This won't be us. This won't be self-publishing or indie publishing unless we can't find a buyer, then we'll publish it ourselves.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
No one wanted to touch it. So whatever. Amazon it
Yeah.
is. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, good. That gives me a reason to stick around for another year or two. So right.
Yeah, I love I love the title "No One Wants to Read Your Shit,"
Yeah.
and sometimes that really strikes home with me, and I don't care if they want to read my shit. I just want them to buy my shit. So like I got to figure out how to like push through the resistance when it comes to marketing and promoting.
Yeah.
That's my Achilles heel right there.
Yeah. I think that's most creative people's Achilles heel, Nick, including mine. I mean, I have a bunch of friends who are painters and they always underprice their stuff. It's like they practically beg people to take it. Um, But it's tough these days, with the long tail, right? There's so many books out there, so many records, so many, it's infinite.
Yeah.
And but people keep buying. So we
It,
gotta, in any event, for me, I'm gonna keep writing even if nobody buys it.
yeah. I know that's true. I know that's true about you, but
Yeah.
you've written some I mean, you've
Some
written
bangers, baby.
Yeah, some bangers for
Yeah,
sure.
as the kids say.
So you don't have to worry about, what your work being clouded by like saturation for sure.
But
Well,
I
I'll
do
say
think people
this.
sometimes. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Go
so
ahead.
no, I was just going to say, for sure, you will always have 2 book sales.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good thing I can count on you guys because my own family won't buy my books.
Hey, I said the same thing.
I've
Yeah.
been there. I know what you mean. Yeah.
I got to give them to them, and they still don't read them.
Yeah, no, of course not. No, I used to I started just writing in the thing, like, whenever I'd like give them a signed copy, which is like the most
Uh-huh.
gauche thing you could do. But like, I just tell them like this cover makes an excellent target next time you're at the range, or it will also the pages will serve as like toilet paper or kindling.
Backup. Yeah.
Yeah, you can diversify your market.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were gonna say something about the writing, writing in a vacuum.
I was just going to say that sometimes people might look at me and think, oh, it's automatic. He writes a book, it gets published. Not true. It's you're sort of starting from scratch each time. It'd be interesting to know how many writers, particularly writers of fiction, are automatic published. Probably not that many when all is said and done. And then there's another wider group that's kind of book to book. Is it good enough? Is there a market right now? Have we found an editor that likes it? That kind of thing. And then there are others that it's a long shot to get published in a mainstream way.
Yeah.
I wonder if a lot of that boils down to you have contracts with a publishing house for either a series or a trilogy or a duology, or just 4 books, like, oh yeah, we have James Patterson for his next 6 books. And if we can both afford each other, then we make that work. And
Yeah.
it's a cutthroat world. It seems like books are, I got this, like, it's probably a self-pitying theory, so pick it apart, but I got like this theory that like being a novelist is maybe next to a poet the hardest art form to try and like sell, because it's not like a CD. You know what I mean? Like a CD is like an hour of your time,
Right, to really go through the whole CD and listen to all the songs.
Yeah,
take you an hour.
yeah.
Like,
and like
the listener, it'd take them an hour.
yeah, a painting, you hang it in the wall, it's passive art.
Mhm.
You invest, you get out of it whatever you invest. But like a novel, you gotta like sit down and it's 500 pages, man.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
makes it hard.
Although I would say the one really plus thing about novels, even though this is kind of a long shot too, is that sometimes movies get made from novels. Sometimes it's easier, rather than writing a screenplay, to write a novel and and then hope that it gets picked up and somebody else turns it into a screenplay. So that's that's a real thing, I think. Even people, and also I think a lot of people buy novels and then they don't necessarily read them, or they'll read part of them and so on. So it's not necessarily true that you can't sell them, but you're right. I mean, attention spans have shrunk so much. Even me myself, if I get through 24 pages of a book, that's a lot. Then I got when I find a book that I can read all the way through, that's a rare thing.
Yeah. Glad to hear you
Not
say
that the
that.
books are bad, it's just that my attention span is short.
Yeah.
That mitigates my self-loathing so much to hear you say that.
Mine too. I've been trying to read Lord Jim.
A
And
great
well, yeah, but I'm
hard,
stuck.
huh?
I'm like 2/3 of the way through it. 2/3 of the way
Oh,
through it. And I
that's
just
great,
like
though.
I can't pick it back up. He's just so dang wordy.
Have you
But
seen the movie, Nick?
No.
I think it's Peter O'Toole, I think, is the
Really?
plays Lord Jim, I think.
Okay.
Nice.
I may be crazy, but that's always easier. It's only 2.5 hours.
Yeah. I've invested way more than 2.5 hours into this book, and I feel like like I want to finish. Like I'm mad at the book for being so wordy and dang long that I'm like really mad and I want to finish it. But at the same time, I've got my reading list is like piling up.
Yeah.
So I don't
I
know
know
what I
what you
should do
mean.
about that.
Yeah.
When you write, so I want to see if this is like a plus or minus for the average novelist in your head, Steve. When you write a novel, do you write it with the not necessarily intention, but desire or idea of it being optioned as a movie, or do you just stick to the pure format of the written word?
That's a great question. I mean, I definitely write it as a novel and not as a like, oh, you can convert this instantly to a movie.
Mhm.
But I do hope, I sort of apply this criterion to any idea that I'm going to spend 2 years or 2.5 years on is, can this be a movie? And I want to answer that yes. I want to have that hope. Not so much because I want to see it as a movie, because that practically never happens. But the other thing is if you can option it, and that's a sort of another source of income, even if the movie never gets made. Somebody will pick it up for, a certain amount of money, and you get a check, and it gives you some hope.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely, that's something in my mind. I mean, do you think that way, you guys?
It happened to me about halfway through the Heavenly Realms series. I started noticing I was writing this with a cinematic flourish, that like this idea, like, oh, this would make a great, I wish Peter Jackson would direct the Heavenly Realms, just these
Yeah, which
delusions
is
of
true.
grandeur,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But it has like this, because you can dream big with a book. My good buddy, my best friend from high school, Will, who is wanting to start a movie podcast, by the way, and
Cool.
and he, I say this every time. Steve doesn't believe me, but I say it every time. And he's right. He genuinely loves the script for King Kong Lives. And Steve, I'm telling you, I would pay you money to have you on the movie podcast with me and Will and talk about that from a writer's perspective. He like has actually some good arguments about that. But he's been writing this banger of a werewolf script forever. And he's got a good version of it. And the chances of it getting picked up are tough. So we've been kicking around the idea of using it, or him turning it into a novel. And it's like, when it's a novel, you can write the most grandiose, big budget thing in the
Yeah.
world, But when you're writing a movie script, you have to think, okay, it's probably going to be a small budget because I don't have a name yet in the industry. So like, I can't have these big moments. I gotta figure out, like, and he's really good at that. He has the werewolf transformation take place like up against a car. So like it
I like that.
actually, right, like it was a good idea because it would allow the creature effects to like the guy to like come out of the car as
Uh-huh.
opposed to like trying to CGI something. So anyways, it's just, yeah, cool. Short answer,
Well,
yeah. Yeah.
you guys have probably heard this story, but supposedly Dances with Wolves, the
Mhm.
idea was Costner and his friend, I forgot his first name, his last name is Wilson. And Wilson, I think, wrote it as a screenplay. And Costner supposedly like put him up against a wall and said, no, 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 write this as a novel, because then we can get the financing, blah blah blah. I don't know exactly how it worked, but that's what supposedly happened. He did write it as a novel, and that was what got it going. But their intention all along was to make a movie.
Wow. That does
The
work.
other thing
That's
about
cool.
that is, if you write a novel and you sort of have hope that it'll be a movie, um, whoever comes in, a producer, director, whatever, who takes it over, they're free to have their own creativity, and make it into their own thing. It's not like they're going to hew exactly to whatever you wrote, in the Heavenly Realms or whatever. The other thing I think about that, like Heavenly Realms novels, is like you can go as big as you want on the printed page, right? There's no budget, right?
Right. Yeah.
Stars can explode. You don't have to worry about
Legions
CGI or
of angels,
AI. Yeah,
700 cubit tall castle walls. Everybody's
Yeah.
flying with armor, using magic. Yeah, you could go, you could go ham.
And I think people read it that way too. It's like you're watching a Peter Jackson movie, right? Yeah. Wow, and so that's great.
Yeah. I felt that way about, I think this is maybe there were several reasons why Gates of Fire truly is my favorite novel ever written. But I think that was one of the things that I really loved about it was that even though you had kind of a laconic, poetic way of treating the prose, it allowed the imagination of me, the reader, to envision something pretty grand and cinematic. And you still do a good job of like conveying the large scale nature of the Battle of Thermopylae or some of these other conflicts that take place. Um, but even in a book like that, there was no shortage of like grandiosity, as far as the scale
Yeah.
goes.
Which is
And
fun to write too.
yeah, but one thing I learned from you, Steve, is when it comes to that, the macro matters, but like it's the nitty gritty down in the mud, exhausted, bloody, dirty grip on the sword handle, kind of like meat, that really like sucks you in. There's this part where Dionikes is talking about he's retelling this story of him and his brother fighting, I think the Corinthians or somebody. It doesn't matter. And there was this big, just a colossus that they had to go up against, and he's like, I just realized I had to put some iron in this bastard quick. And I think the guy gets like half his head sheared off, and it's
Wow.
it's this very microscopic, finite look that you can then extrapolate out. It's very cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
it's almost like you know what you're doing, Steve. It's wild. Well, I know Nick had some really, really good questions. I know we're
But I don't want them in the Patreon portion. I think we should jump into the main thing.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean,
Jump in.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll do a little soft reset here.
Yeah. Hey everybody, Nick here with the Goslings. Jonathan and I always reserve the first 15 to 20 minutes of an interview just for our patrons. What you just heard is a sample of what you can find a whole lot more of, exclusive only to our patrons on patreon.com/the Goslings. Head over there for more exclusive content. And now we will get into the rest of the interview with Stephen Pressfield.
Welcome, everyone. We are joined by Stephen Pressfield, author of The War of Art, Gates of Fire. No One Wants to Read Your Shit. Let's see. So many amazing things. Government Cheese. The Daily Pressfield, which is available here.
Most recently, the Daily Pressfield.
Scores of other books that are all amazing. We won't, spend the whole time. But Steve, thank you for joining us. And we just got out of our Patreon exclusive segment where we talked about writing. Nick has some awesome questions for you, but just for our general audience, just wanted to real quick say hello, see how you're doing, how you been.
Hey, it's always a pleasure to be with you guys, here on a little tea time. GEA, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
All right.
Awesome. Well, the Daily Pressfield is out. First of all, I want to say this book is a daily kick in the pants. I think I've heard you describe it as a daily kick in the pants.
That was what I hoped it would be, yeah.
Yes, and I can tell people who are watching this that in fact is the case. And I wanted to thank you publicly on this for your book, because your book helped me write my book, helped me finish writing my book.
Ah, great.
And now I'm in the exploratory, we're, outsourcing a little bit of editing. I'm, on the hunt for a good cover design. I'm kind of in that phase. But the writing is done and the revision on my end is done because of this book, day by day. It helped me grind through it.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And it is fantastic. I haven't gone through the whole thing because when I got done reading the book, I felt like I didn't need the daily kick in the pants anymore, foolishly, because there are still other things I can apply this daily discipline to, in the project, but I haven't done that. But this book is really, really helpful. And I understand from a recent announcement you made that you just finished the audiobook version of this.
Yeah,
Uh,
looks like 3 months too late, but we finally got it done. Yeah.
well,
We should've-
talk about what was challenging about that release, and from what I understand, you're the narrator. Is that right?
Yeah, I think, a book like this that's like you say, that's trying to be a kick in the pants that you read, day one, day two, day three, it definitely should come from me. If I'm writing, it shouldn't be an actor or somebody else doing that. But it was more complicated putting it together technically than I thought it would be. We did it once and there was like a glitch that threw the whole thing out. And then we had to do it again. And so anyway, it's a long story, but I'm glad it's finally done. And let me just ask you, Nick, how did you use the book? I mean, because it's meant to be read one day at a time. Did you actually do that, or how
I
did
did.
you use
I would do one and only one day at a time in the book. So I
it? Uh-huh.
wouldn't read like 2 days in a row. I wouldn't do three. I wouldn't do a week. I wouldn't backtrack. So, well, I missed a couple days, so I'm going to go back and get caught up. I wouldn't do that.
Uh-huh.
I would do one day at a time. I would read it. I'd let it sink in, and then I'd jump into my writing. And then when I was done with my writing, I would go back to the companion journal and make my
Uh-huh.
entries. So that's how I used it.
That's great,
Yeah.
because that's very gratifying to me. That's what we hoped would happen.
Yeah. That was great. So, there's a section in here, the chapters are themed, and which I really appreciate, but there's a section that you talk about tuning into the cosmic radio.
Uh,
For people
Yes.
who haven't read this yet, can you explain what that means? What do you mean by that?
Well, as you guys know, I'm definitely a believer in multiple dimensions of reality. And if you ask the question, if you're a writer or any kind of artist, where do ideas come from? You know, they definitely don't come from us. They come from, you're in the shower and suddenly you have an idea, right? Or you're driving down the freeway and, ideas come from another source. What I like to think of in using the Greek goddess concept is the muses, right? The goddesses who inspire artists. But another way of looking at it, that is the cosmic radio station. And our job as artists, I think, is to tune in to that radio station. And I believe it's actually literally a frequency. It's literally a vibration. And I do think that each of us, that station, our muse, our goddess, our source of inspiration, is broadcasting, like to you, Jonathan, to you, Nick, the idea that's for you, heavenly realms or whatever it is, right? And our job as writers and as artists is to be receptive to that, so that when the song comes in from the cosmic radio station, we've got the radio on and it's recording, so that we can take that inspiration and run with it, on the printed page or in the recording studio or whatever it is. And in fact, I think in many ways that's the talent that takes the longest time to develop. I think, to be able to be open to that, the music of the spheres. Because on the one hand, it's really commonplace. It's like you're in the shower and suddenly you have an idea for a book, and you go, "Oh, wow, that's," and you just, a lot of times I think it'll go in one ear and out the other. We're getting this great inspiration, we just blow it off. Oh, that's a dumb idea. I never even thought about it. Whereas I think, the artist that's really tuned into that, whether they're a musician and it's just a melody that comes to them or something, or a writer and it's an idea for a scene or for a book, the real artist that's tuned in grabs onto that idea. It doesn't go in one ear and out the other. They hang on to it and then they take it and run. And that's the other half of the artist's skill, is to be able to sit down, in front of one of these things and actually turn it into something in the material world. So that's what I mean by tuning into the cosmic radio station. And that, like on the box behind you, Nick,
Yeah.
is an illustration by our great illustrator, Vic Juhasz. I don't know if anybody can see it,
Let's
but
bring
it's
it up
like
here. See if I can get
a
it close.
Cadillac
Focuses
driving
it great
across the
there.
desert, a Cadillac convertible driving across the desert in the middle of the night with a super long antenna, like a 50-foot antenna, and trying to tune in to, WLS 50,000 watts out of Chicago, that kind of thing.
So it seems like the example of like being in the shower and an idea just strikes you. It just comes in seemingly out of nowhere. You know, is that person tuned in because they're not paying attention, or is there something we can intentionally do daily to tune ourselves in?
That's a great question. I know a lot of, maybe other people have talked about this more. Maybe um, I'm blanking on the name, the daily pages idea, whatever that. And there are, my thinking is that why ideas come to us in the shower or when we're driving on the freeway or when we're on the subway or something is that those are the periods, or even when we're like in a twilight area of where you're going to sleep or you're just waking up, is that when the ego is sort of out of the picture, you're not thinking about anything, your mind's a blank, that's when ideas come in from another source. And I think it is a very much you can't, I don't think, be focusing like, oh, let me have it, I'm listening. I think it's the opposite of that. You sort of just your mind becomes a blank in those states, taking a shower, driving on the freeway, whatever it is. But when the idea comes, I think we all know, you guys know, it hits you, it's like, it's not like you have to physically dismiss it or mentally dismiss it to lose it. Otherwise, it's there, and then our job is just to hang on to it. That's why I'm always have my phone with me, and I'm always ready to dictate whatever comes in. And usually, when I play it back later, almost always it's good. It's not like I look and listen and I go, oh, this is bullshit. Why did I even write this down? Usually it's like, wow, this is great. Well, let's go with it.
That's
Yeah.
cool, man. That's cool. Well, it sounds like getting the ego out of the way is a big piece of it.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's the real artist skill, I think, is getting the ego out of the way. So easy to say and so hard to do.
Which is probably why most people get so many ideas in the shower, because that's a very humbling process to go through. Yeah, I'm guessing. I don't know. Maybe most people don't like the way so their mind isn't on that. They're just like, I'm just gonna
The other thing
blank
about
out.
a shower or driving is it's an activity that takes some concentration, but not very much. You can sort of do it in your sleep. And that's kind of puts you into, like riding on the subway is another, you're hanging onto a strap, the train is vibrating and your mind sort of goes in, you leave your body somehow,
Yeah. I get that when I'm driving sometimes, when I'm commuting to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote the whole Heavenly Realms series working third shift security as a night watchman of an empty building. And it was, and you don't realize the good days until they're gone, when like,
yeah, right.
you know what I mean? Like, it was like the perfect storm. It's the middle of the night, so there are no distractions.
Yeah.
And just like what you're saying, Steve, there would be a bunch of mundane activities. I'd get up and do a patrol, and it would take every hour. I'd do it, and it would take anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, depending on the type of patrol. It's just enough time to get your body moving, get you,
Yeah.
outside of this chair where you're
Yeah.
gonna fall asleep, and then come back, sit down, and just write the whole time. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's just mundane enough to be zen-like, but just physical enough to not let you fall asleep.
Yeah.
And
It's kind of like Night at the Museum,
yeah,
that's what I think that movie made so much sense,
yeah,
He's just a security guard walking around. Yeah.
yeah. And it is those moments, though, those moments of inspiration, or for me, I don't know if you have this, but it's the moments where I figure something out, like, oh, that character needs this, or who do I have say this line, or why, or I have this character say this thing.
Yeah.
um they're like soulgasms. They're these like,
Ah,
you
Never
know,
heard that term.
they're like
You know,
moments of,
another really obvious activity that this is true is when you're taking a walk.
yeah.
That that really is great because you, particularly if it's on a trail or something, rather than where you have to concentrate a little bit, but not that much. That's when a lot of ideas come in, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Speaking of dreams, you were on the Micro podcast, I think,
Yeah,
Yeah.
not too long ago, and you guys sort of talked about a little bit about kind of like what we talked about last time about, dreams and the importance of dreams, and sort of in regards to those twilight moments of mundane inspiration, like where it crosses over. Have you ever had dreams that shook your tree in a way that made you change your life at all, or change the direction of your writing somehow?
yeah, I have. I mean, I wrote about a couple of these things in the War of Art and in a couple of other books,
Yep.
where I mean, one of them, there's nothing more boring than telling this, but I'll try to make it brief.
That's what I bring to the table, Steve.
And I don't know if this was even a dream. This was sort of a waking thing for me, but somehow I had this dream or vision or whatever it was that an eagle came down. You'll remember this when I start to tell you, and kind of merged with my body so that my head became the eagle's head and my arms became the wings. And I took off, and I could see as I was flying, experiencing flying, that it was impossible for a bird to fall out of the sky because the air was like a solid substance, just like when you push an oar through water, and your wings could very, very easily flap against the air. There was just and push off, no problem at all. And so, but I still didn't quite get what was going on. So I asked the eagle in the dream, I said, "What am I supposed to be learning from this?" And the eagle said to me, "You're supposed to learn that things that you think are completely insubstantial, like air, actually are solid and have, you really have to take them seriously." And I kind of got it. And what I thought that meant was ideas like the cosmic radio station. That sounds airy fairy and a lot of bullshit are really true. And thoughts that you have, ideas that you have, crazy dreams that you have are real. They're not something to be dismissed, just like the air underneath an eagle's wings. So that really kind of changed my whole attitude towards what the nature of the universe was, that it isn't just a material world. There's a whole other dimension of thought and ideas and imagination, and we have to take that really seriously. And that's like the sort of the foundation concept of being an artist. That's really what you're about, is latching onto these things that have no physical reality, but have tremendous emotional, psychological, and spiritual reality.
Yeah. That I love the picture of the car in the night desert driving with the antenna, because that is the perfect visualization of almost like the perfect storm for inspiration. I don't know how many ideas I have gotten in the shower or on the road with the stars overhead, but it's
Yeah.
like 90% of them,
Yeah.
probably,
And let me give credit to Vic Juhas, who was the illustrator,
Yeah.
who really came up with that visual. And and you can't really see it on the screen right now, but it's really um, a great visual representation of that.
Yeah. We tried to sort of put it up on the camera a little bit. We can see if we can get the glare out from our
If I hide my face, there you go.
there we
There
go.
we go.
Faces.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's not bad. And
Yeah.
and if you get can people still get this version, this box
yeah,
version, by the way?
definitely.
So if you do, you not only get a signed hardcover and the journal, but you also get a booklet of other illustrations by Victor, and they're They're awesome.
Yeah,
They're all
great.
just as like profound as this one. So
Yeah, I definitely have my favorites, and I think I mentioned this last time we talked. The one with the guy sitting at the desk, and there's a bunch of people behind him. One guy's got a fishing pole, and and the other guy, they're all trying to get his attention, and he's at his desk writing, and he's got his big hand up backwards, like stopping them, telling them to no. And the caption is, "You can't be a pro if you can't say no."
Yeah, that was totally Vic's idea, that visual. Yeah,
Really,
so bless
it's
him.
great. Yeah, it was great. It was fantastic. So the idea of the cosmic radio and that being real, and you really believing like there's something there, ultra dimensional, that you're trying to tune into, that's trying to tell you something, you're trying to tune into that. The artist's journey, if you're turning into that, you mentioned in the Daily Pressfield there's a themed section about the artist's journey being dangerous. What is there? What is that danger? Why is it dangerous?
That's a great question. I'm not even sure I know the answer, but we certainly have seen Elvis and Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and God knows how many people that were really great, terrific artists that wound up overdosing or doing something like that. Now maybe that's fame that's the villain there rather than the artist's journey. But I mean, I think when we become pure artists, or where we're just trying to tune into the cosmic radio station, what we're tuning into really is the unknown. And it's not and it can be dangerous in the unknown. You start writing heavenly realms stories, and your mind can go off into a lot of weird different places. It's sort of a dance where you kind of go into this other dimension and see and experience or tap into various energies, but then you have to come back down to earth and convert them into music or into words or whatever. And you can become untethered a little bit. So that's why I do. It obviously is dangerous because there's so many casualties. Hemingway,
Yeah.
go right down the list.
yeah. You know what though, when it comes to for me, a lot of times it's dreams, but when it comes to dreams or the creative lightning strike that we respond to, there's something about both of those that is so numinous. Not only does it like shake your tree, but it almost wakes you up from the dream of mundanity that is your life. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's I really, that's the old thing that you say, are we material creatures living a spiritual existence, or are we spiritual creatures living a material existence? And I think it's definitely the latter.
Same.
And
Yeah.
as beautiful as this world is and as life is, it's a form of hell as well, and it certainly can be a form of kind of mundanity, as you say, Jonathan, and that's partly, I think, what art is about, is trying to pierce that that quotidian, daily bullshit surface thing to find what's underneath. And I think that's like indigenous peoples seem to be able to do that really well, right? They can go to whatever dances or around the fire or crazy, ceremonies, and where they really leave the mundane world behind. And so yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan Goss with the Goslings. Give your inner Christian warrior something to really gravitate towards and feed upon with Heavenly Realms, a series of 7 novels about angelic warfare written by me, yours truly. It is masculine, warrior-based fiction that is biblically based, but is extremely gratifying for the warrior in all of you. It is available on Amazon in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. If you like it, leave a review. If you want signed copies, you can always email us at thegoslingsgroup@gmail.com, and I would really love to hear from you. Again, Heavenly Realms by Jonathan Goss, available on Amazon. Check it out.
So speaking of indigenous peoples and piercing the BS, you were I think you were on Joe Rogan's podcast. I think you talked with him a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
it was actually a couple of years ago, but
was it?
yeah,
Was it
yeah.
I was gonna say that was the one. Yeah.
Maybe they reposted it. Maybe he must have reposted it.
Well, maybe they did, huh?
Yeah, it
Or
looked
the
like it was recent.
algorithm caught up with Nick
Ah,
and was like, "Hey,
Well,
you need this one." I do remember that interview, by the way. It was cool.
there's in that interview, there's a very interesting section where, I mean, you're talking about, resistance is the theme. A resistance with a capital R is the theme. Rogan is talking about this tribe, this native tribe. I think he called it I wrote it down, the Heyoka people. And they have in their culture one guy in the tribe whose job it is to mock everybody, like a jester. He goes and mocks everybody, and a part of their culture is that you have to be okay getting mocked, because that keeps everyone's ego from being artificially inflated. It pierces the BS, it roots out things that aren't true. And he was kind of applauding that idea that, it's, that's what this person's muse was. That's what
Yeah,
this person's job was.
yeah.
That was his art form. But then a few minutes later, it sounded like he was complaining about people making negative comments on his videos that were also criticizing him and saying that they're damaged people. And then I think you chimed in and said that, expressions of negativity can just be another form of their own resistance. And so here's my question. Like, it would, on the surface, there was this contradiction I was trying to wrap my head around. I know there's
Fall to the carpet with Nick Goss.
No, I know there's nuance to this. So, the thing, and I know this is a long-winded question, please forgive me, but the great thing about comedians is that there are no sacred cows.
Yeah.
And that's what we love about this. We need about them. But can you mock the mocker? Can you criticize the criticizer? And it still be that same, can it still be your art form, or is it just another form of resistance? So my question is, finally, I know, getting to the point. At what point does criticism become a form of resistance when comedians and writers do it professionally? And is criticism, which is like my superpower, by the way, is criticism resistance, or is it following the muse?
That's another great question. I think there's a difference between trolling somebody and doing what, Richard Pryor, or Chris Rock, or George Carlin would do. What the George Carlin or Chris Rock do is, in a really insightful way, they cut through the ego and the bullshit of somebody that's overinflated. And that's a positive thing. Now, as far as Heyoka, I'm trying to flash back to The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan thing, right? And as I remember that word, it came from Phil Jackson in regards to Dennis Rodman, and that a Heyoka in the Native American tradition was a backward walking person, and that every tribe needs this one person, like a Dennis Rodman, that doesn't follow any of the rules. And that Phil Jackson was great about giving Dennis Rodman a lot of rope. When he wanted to go on vacation, in the middle of the playoffs, he let him go. So that's like a great comedian, like a George Carlin or something like that, that punctures the inflated ego of something else. But trolling, I think, is just being an asshole, and that, I think, is when that is resistance, in my opinion. It's like if any of us write a book and put it out there, and you have reviews on Amazon, there's always these dickheads that'll give you the 1-star review. It's like I say, I can say of anything of mine, okay, it may be bad, but it's not 1-star bad, And the people who are doing that are obviously like haters, like
Yeah. Dude, it happened. I had a guy who
what's his
got
name?
mad at me. I had a guy who got mad at me, Steve, on Instagram, and then found my books, left a negative review with a 1 star, and then 2 minutes later, 1 starred all the other books in the series
Yeah.
on Goodreads.
Yeah. And that's the thing that
And
people,
Goodreads won't take it down, by the way. Even if
no,
you could prove it to them, like, hey, this is
yeah.
fraudulent, they don't care.
Sometimes Amazon will, but typically they won't. But you can click on any of those 1 star review people and you click on their name and it'll show you all the reviews that they leave for everybody across the whole platform.
Oh, I didn't know
And
that.
they're all 1 stars. They're all 1 star.
Yeah.
I mean, what's really happening there, Nick, is that that person wishes they had written the Heavenly Realms novel. It's their own resistance, right? They see something out there that's been done properly, and it's a reproach to them because they haven't done it. But it's all on the unconscious level. They're not aware of this, you know? And the interesting thing, a lot of times when people will engage with somebody like that, the person immediately apologizes and, you know,
Yeah.
wants to be your best friend.
Yeah.
So it's,
I ran
but
into
it
that.
is one's own resistance. And I find when I find myself in that troll position, which every now and then I do, I have to ask myself, what is this person doing that I'm jealous of or that I wish I had done? You know, and then shut the fuck up and do it yourself.
Right. Yeah.
That happened to me a few weeks ago. I made
By the way, I'd love to read Steve's 1 star
I-
reviews of everything.
we should do that. I made this little video of me. The debates were coming up, and so I made a video of me doing a Trump impression, and it was horrible. It's a horrible Trump impression. I can't do it. And I put it out there on my personal YouTube page just for fun, just for fun. And I got one comment, and it was a guy says that's the worst Trump impression that exists ever. And and I replied and I said, I know. I envy the likes of, and then I made, named a couple of
Shane
really great,
Gillis.
Shane Gillis,
Yeah.
Frank
Caliendo.
Frank
Yeah.
Caliendo. I envy the likes of them. I think they're fantastic. And hey, by the way, I'd love to hear your Trump impression sometime.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh no, mine's even worse than yours. And but you call them out on it all of a sudden, and they're like, yeah, no, I'm like, I mean, I made a video of me doing it. How about your turn? You do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Turn the
At
tables
least you
on them.
did it. You put it out there. Yeah.
Right?
Okay. On the topic of resistance, you believe that resistance is predictable.
Yes.
What
It
are
appears at predictable points.
at predictable points? Okay, so what are universally the most predictable points of resistance in a project?
Okay. There's a bunch of them. The first place that resistance will strike is before we start a project, right? And the voice will say, who do you think you are to tackle this project? You've never done anything like this before. You're an idiot. You don't have enough education. You have too much education, et cetera, et cetera. And then it'll say further that, and this idea is a really stupid idea. Nobody's going to be interested in this idea, da, 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 da. And many people live their entire lives being defeated by this one particular aspect of resistance, and they never do start the things that they do. So my own kind of mantra for overcoming that, because it happens with me all the time, my voice will say, in my head will say, this is a really dumb idea. And I had that voice for Gates of Fire, for The Legend of Bagger Vance, everything. My mantra for that is start before you're ready. And I just say, don't even think about it, just begin. And I saw a thing with Arnold Schwarzenegger where he said he had a little mantra, which was don't think. It's like when you wake up in the morning, the alarm goes off and you've got to go to the gym. And he says, your mind will start going and saying, oh, I really hurt my arm the other day. Maybe I shouldn't go. I need a day. He says, don't think, just get out of bed. And so that's sort of my mantra for that first form of resistance. I could go on and on. I'll just do like one or two.
Okay.
Nick, to what you said, another great place where what you said earlier is resistance will strike after we're done, after we finish the project and we now have to promote it. We now have to market it. Then the voice in our head fear will come up, and that voice will really try to stop us from getting out there. So that's I mean, it stops probably 99% of the creative people that finish something. So that's another place that will really strike is just before the end of something, when we're like 99% of the way through. And this was always my issue, that I could never finish anything. I'd get right up to the end and I would act out in some way. I'd, do the equivalent of getting myself fired, or that kind of thing. But somehow I'd blow the whole thing up right at the finish. And obviously at that point, we're afraid, what if it fails? What if we put it out there and it's ridiculed? All that sort of stuff. And that's a legitimate fear. But that's another point where resistance will really strike. And there are a bunch more. I don't want to go on forever and forever, but they are predictable. And I find, even though I'm on my like 25th book now, resistance hits me every time at the exact same places I'm talking about. And so now, having gone through it so many times, I can sort of say, oh, this is the devil coming at me again in this spot. And I know the answer is always the same. You got to just push through it. Dismiss it and push through it. So those are definitely predictable resistance points.
That's great,
By
though.
the way, let me say one thing here for you guys. I think I'm for the first time, this is a little bit of an announcement. I think I told you this before. I've invited you guys. I'm doing a one-day writing retreat on September 7th in Malibu, California. And I'll be talking about a lot of this stuff that you're asking me right now, Nick. This retreat is not about the craft of writing, but it's about the mindset that the three of us always talk about, of overcoming our own self-sabotage. And I'll give you guys I think I already did, but I'll give you guys the link.
Yeah.
If anybody's interested in attending.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. We were gonna ask you about that right at the end, which I know we're creeping up on time, so we're not gonna let that cut us short. We still have more questions, but
Okay.
But we would like to circle back right at the end and get you to talk a little bit more about that seminar.
Okay.
Before then, though, I wanted to ask you just a real nuts and bolts question as far as writing goes. If you could give any advice on the crafting of characters, anything come to mind about how you craft your characters? What's a good way to do it? Bad way to do it?
And that's a great question, Jonathan. I may do it the wrong way. I don't know, but usually I'll have the story, what's got to happen. At this particular moment, the Indian chief has got to come in and set his hair on fire, whatever. And so I'll have to in other words, I know what I want to make the characters do. It's not like I allow them to come on the page and just do anything they want. That's not going to happen. They've got to do A, B, C to make the story work. And so then I'll try to, do the old Stanislavski thing of an actor entering a scene is supposed to ask himself, who am I? Why am I here? What do I want? But mainly, what do I want in this scene, right? And so I know, as being the god of this scene, what I want them to do, or what I want the story to. And so I'll just try to find the most plausible way to make that happen. Or I'll also go into the character's head as if I were an actor. And I would say, if I'm playing this part and I'm in this scene or I'm in this sequence through the story, what do I want? What am I trying to do? If I'm a villain in the James Bond movie, I want to take over the world or whatever it is. Or, if I'm a guy at a bar and he meets a girl, well, I want to somehow, take her home with me. And I'll do that for every character in the scene. And sometimes the scene will change. And then the last thing that I will do, once I sort of know what I want the character to do, is I'll kind of ask myself, what would the opposite be? What would, because characters never act the way you want them to, you know?
Oh my gosh,
And
that's true.
in real life, right? We'll always sort of do
Yeah.
something a little different than what you thought. Um, and so that's kind of the point of trying to make a character have a little more than one dimension. That maybe the character in the end is going to do what I want him to do to make the story go forward, but maybe he'll do it for another reason, different reason. You know, it's like it wasn't that he wanted to keep his girlfriend from cheating on him. He really didn't care about that at all. It was really for another, you know what I mean? And when
Yeah.
you can get to that other level, it becomes more interesting. So I'm not sure that that's the way Aaron Sorkin does it, but that, at my level, that's what I do.
Well, it sounds a lot like the story drives the characters, which I think lends itself to a more epic feel with your
Yeah, maybe so.
writing,
Yeah.
you know, that you're really more at the mercy of the fates, and that's kind of, to me, that's the difference between someone like Tolkien or Robert Jordan, somebody like that, and somebody like George R. R. Martin. While they're both good, I wouldn't necessarily consider George R. R. Martin like a timeless mythological classic, his Song of Ice and Fire series, even though it's very good. Whereas I would with something like Tolkien or Robert Jordan, because in the Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, that's the characters are the ones driving the story, which is very evocative, but it's kind of a soap opera. Whereas, like with, a lot of your fiction, Tolkien, Robert Jordan, this more mythological fantasy stuff, the greater cosmological events like the gods are influencing the characters that you care about, and yet you still have like this little chaos thrown in there,
Ah,
you know. So,
yeah. Yeah,
um,
that's really interesting. I love the idea of fate or destiny driving, or the gods, you know, and that we human beings are trying to figure out what's going on with ourselves. We think we know what we want. We think we're actually, having agency in the world, but in fact, there are forces that are greater than we are, and in the end, we finally realize what they are.
I think that's what gives it
It's
that
usually a
timeless.
sadder but wiser type of ending, you
Mm.
know.
Yeah.
um, well, and real quick for in regards to nonfiction, I don't remember if we talked about this before, but I was reading Government Cheese, a memoir, your memoir, and it motivated me to dust off some of my nonfiction. And I noticed in reading some of my older nonfiction that I had like kind of curated some of these events to sort of hone in on a certain emotional theme,
Uh-huh.
and when in reading it, basically in reading it, I was like, oh boy, I left out like some pretty, not so great things that happened in this story, because I was aiming for something. Um, when you write nonfiction or when you talk about writing nonfiction for other people, is that something that seems like a good idea to you, or is it more like, no, just be a journalist and tell the story and let it unfold naturally?
That's a great question. I think you do have to curate it. I think that's what it's all about. Um, and I think even journalists, a really good journalist, curates it. You know,
Mhm.
it's like
And really
somebody
bad journalist.
writing about the Vietnam War, right? And said
Yeah.
he has to answer the question: What's this? What was this war about? You know, if you don't answer that question and you don't have a point of view, then you're not really delivering the goods. You can be wrong, in your curation thing. But I do think you have to curate. You have to curate. You have to ask yourself, what is the theme? What is this about? And certainly in Government Cheese, I did that. I cut a lot of stuff that the story has a theme. It's about one thing. Like Government Cheese is about the evolution of a writer, of somebody going from a sort of a vague aspiration to becoming a professional, totally committed to what it was. That's what it's about. So knowing that, I then cut everything else that doesn't have anything to do with that. Now, you could also, and I'm sure this is true for your stuff, Jonathan, you could take the same material, the same real life material, and write a second book that was about a whole other different thing. Make a whole different theme, the pointlessness of ambition or something like that.
Yeah.
And in that case, you'd cut everything you did in the first one and bring in other stuff that you never. And I think it's even legitimate to fictionalize, within reason in nonfiction. But that is, yeah, good question.
Oh, thank you. Well, I know we're pressed for time, and we want to talk about the seminar real quick before we let you go.
Yeah.
But
I only have one last question, unrelated to the writing workshop. If you're reading something right now, what are you reading at the moment?
I'm reading stuff that's about research for the project that I'm working on now, which happens to be set in Rome in 1943, 1944. So I'm reading like Fellini's biography, and another book called The Battle for Rome, that was about the Nazis and the Italian resistance and that sort of stuff.
Cool.
And I'm also reading Seven Pillars of Wisdom, T.E. Lawrence's book, which is rough going, but really great. That's another one, like we were talking before, Nick. It's like I look at it, 486 pages. I go, holy shit, how am I going to
get? Yeah. Joseph Conrad uses too many words, man. He just uses too many words.
Really?
I think so. I mean, he was the kind of the great English novelist of the 19th century, but
yeah,
was
he paid by the word like Charles Dickens?
He must have been paid by
I
the word.
hate Charles Dickens. I'm just gonna tell you right now.
I love Dickens, but he's too wordy too. And maybe it's just my 21st century short attention span.
That's probably what it is. I know it would be for me if I was reading Conrad, because I read Conrad like in high school, right? And I thought it was great, but that was a million years ago. That was when my attention span was long. Yeah.
You know what though? Like, I've been accused of being a little wordy, but I learned it. I learned it from Steve. It's like that PSA. I learned it from you, Dad. But like what I learned from Gates of Fire, especially, but most of the other books too, especially Virtues of War, your fiction is you're not wordy in like a messy construction sort of way of just bricks of $5 and $10 words. You have a poetic intellectualism to your prose, so it's almost like you're wordy in a way that stretches people's vocabularies, but in a useful, laconic sort of way, and it's a skill.
What I'm definitely trying to do there, and is I'm deliberately writing in a kind of archaic style, because the events are from, because like Gates of Fire is meant to seem like it was written 2,500 years ago, that it's an immediate document that somebody pulled, and so you want to have people talk in a little bit more of a formal, old-fashioned way, and so that, as you know, that's not my style in everything, but in writing about the ancient past, I think I deliberately want to make it sound kind of old-fashioned, so that it seems real.
Yeah,
I don't want people saying, hey, dude,
right. That's such a cool like meta maneuver too. I think there are a lot of writers who don't even possess the capacity, much less the skill to be able to pull something like that off. And yet you kind of did the opposite with the Afghan war. At least the opposite compared to the Virtues of War.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Same time period. Virtues of War is a novel where Alexander the Great is the narrator. It's one of your absolute finest masterpieces. And then you have the Afghan War, which is also really amazing, but it's a Macedonian foot soldier, phalangite. So like the attitude and the way, then the prose are totally different, which is like almost impossible for people to do, is to change their prose. So anyways, it's
all right.
It's pretty cool. Okay, we're out of time. Before we go though, September 7th, which is a Saturday, your seminar. Give people real quick, just a brief rundown of the seminar, if that's okay, and how they could sign up or get in contact with you if they wanted to attend it and what it's about.
Um, this seminar, it's a 1 day thing. It's going to be outdoors at the Zuma Orchid Farm, and I'm not going to be talking at all about the craft of writing. None of the characterization and nothing like that. I'm just going to talk about the mindset that we all kind of need to have if we're going to tackle a project that's going to take a year or 2 years, like a novel or a long form fiction piece or game of ice and fire or whatever it is. And because we're essentially alone in a room with our own demons, and we got to do this for 2 years. And so and like what we were talking earlier, Nick, about predictable points where resistance is going to strike. I want to sort of give the people that attend this workshop, this retreat, kind of a roadmap of where the shit is going to hit the fan and how to, so know that ahead of time so it doesn't derail you and knock you off your game. So that's what this is. The way to get on the list is you'll put up the thing, but it's www.silentwritingretreat.com, because it's silent. You're not allowed to ask any questions, and it's going to be except at the very end, and because otherwise things get off track, and so anyway, that's the story of this thing. September 7th in Malibu, California.
That's very cool. And for anybody who might be wondering, why this instead of something on the mechanics of writing? Is it just like everybody's talking about the mechanics of writing and you're diving into the spiritual, or is it something else?
I think there are a lot of other writers that can do that better than me, and know more about it than I do. But I don't think anybody knows more about the mindset of that long haul project. I feel confident that I can deliver on that subject.
We do too. Yeah,
for sure.
I might sell a motorcycle and come out there,
And I should warn everybody that this ain't cheap.
Yeah.
So when you sign up and you see what it costs, you may go, oh shit, But hopefully it's worth it. And this is definitely going to be a hardcore day, So if you're thinking about coming and you're just kind of fucking around, don't do it. This is going to be a hardcore day.
That's not your style, anyways. You're the boot camp guy, man. That's what we've always loved about you. So awesome. Well, Stephen Pressfield, Uncle Steve, thank you for joining us once again for another fireside chat. We always enjoy it. We're so humbled.
We love our time with you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
Thank you, my favorite nephews. I always wonder when are you guys going to get bored and stop,
Never.
But, I'm not bored if you aren't, So Nick, Jonathan, thank you so much. Take up the broken sword of our father and strike down the
darkness.
Strike down the darkness.
Yes, sir.
Baby. All right. Till next time, Uncle Steve. See you, buddy.
Okay. Till next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.